Good evening. Last night we majored on the Sergeant Blake case. I said how sorry I felt for him, a man who'd been put through hell, and his family too, over the course of the last couple of years. And yet, from the AOPC and indeed the Crown Prosecution Service, no sympathy for him whatsoever, just sympathy for the family of Chris Kaba. Things get worse. You know, we learn now that the police officer faces possible misconduct hearings. We also learn that the jury wanted with their verdict, their unanimous verdict, a note read out which said they did not believe this case should ever have come to court, and yet the judge chose not to read it out. And I did wonder why it all seemed so one-sided, that nothing that Kaba had done in his long criminal record, which began at the age of 13, which included stabbings, beatings, firearms offences, and, of course, just 3 days before the incident on Streatham Hill, the fact that he'd fired 5 shots, 3 of which had hit a man. I did wonder why everything about him was kept quiet, and yet the anonymity of the police officer, which his counsel had begged to remain secret, had been denied by the judge. Well, we learn now there is a £10,000 bounty on his head. We learn that his kids have had to be removed from school, and frankly, I could not feel sorrier for this man who was simply doing his job. But there was, unusually for me, sitting in the House of Commons this afternoon, a piece of good news, because this is what the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said.
When officers act in the most dangerous situations on behalf of the state, it is vital that those officers and their families are not put in further danger during any subsequent legal proceedings. So we will therefore introduce a presumption of anonymity for firearms officers subject to criminal trial following a police shooting in the course of their professional duties up to the point of conviction.
Well, in the light of what's happened, that must be a good thing. And you probably heard me. I was one of the loudest cheers there in the chamber. I don't want anyone to go through what this police sergeant has been through. It just seems to me to be wrong at almost every angle. And yet, not everybody was impressed. Hard left Labour MP Kim Johnson rose in the debate and said this.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to thank the Home Secretary for her statement. I'd also like to send my condolences to the family, friends and loved ones of Chris Kaba, particularly this week while the media are using racist gang tropes to justify the killing of Chris Kaba. 1,900 people have died in police custody since 1990. 1990, and I would say that the police do have protections. You know, we know that our black communities are over-policed and under-supported, so can the Home Secretary give us assurances that we and our communities are kept safe and that extra protections are not given to the police because they already have the protections they need?
Well, again, the same line there, no sympathy at all for the police officer, the police sergeant, rather, and his family, but plenty for Chris Kaba. But here's the really interesting thing. Why did the Crown Prosecution Service in the first place push for a murder conviction as opposed to a manslaughter one? And frankly, given the fact that the Crown Prosecution Service at no point has showed any regret for pushing this forward, I'm asking you at home, is the Crown Prosecution Service fit for purpose? Please let me know. Farage at gbnews.com or tweet Farage on GB News. I'm joined by Paul Britton, criminal defence solicitor. Now, anonymity would be unusual in a case like this. But what was interesting, I thought, Paul, was reading the reports that his KC, the police sergeant's KC, actually pleaded with the judge in the court and said, if you don't give him anonymity, he will become a target. And now what has happened to this man is truly awful. Should a police officer in these circumstances, in your view, be given the right to anonymity?
I think there is a risk, and we've just heard Yvette Cooper there, that if we start giving certain people in certain professions anonymity to remain anonymous so the public don't know who they are, you start to create or lean towards a two-tier system. Why should people from certain professions be granted that privilege, yet others that get caught up in the criminal justice system not?
Because a fraudster is slightly less likely to be chased by a gangster mob than somebody in this situation.
No, but, I mean, you bring a fraudster in, but a murderer from any walk of life could be working in a supermarket, at a train station, in a studio like this, in a law firm, wherever it is.
No, we're very civilised here, I promise.
I want no lawyers. You know, why should we pick who benefits from... And it is a privilege to remain anonymous, because what's so important, and what many criticise when things are done in secrecy, is that there is no transparency. And we must ensure that there is transparency, and the public have a right to see the proceedings. And in any event, well, I mean, how are we going to manage the trial in the Old Bailey? Were we going to say, right, we don't release the name and we refer to the officer as MX, whatever it was? And are we going to put screens up? Are we going to shuttle him or her out of the Old Bailey? You know, what provisions? And then again, we've got...
There are complex... No, I get it. There are deep complexities here, but it is interesting that everything his KC promised would happen has happened. Kids being removed from school, family living in hiding, bounty on his head, not pretty. When it comes to the Crown Prosecution Service, they showed in their statement after the verdict yesterday no contrition of any kind at all, no sympathy for the police officer or what he'd been through. Are the Crown Prosecution Service fit for purpose?
The Crown Prosecution Service they're a good body. I know the point that you make is that, well, one, the statement, and two, should they have proceeded with the murder? I mean, if we start with the murder, the thing about murder is that they are saying there was an intention to take life. So there was a mental element when that officer fired those shots. He fired them with the intention to kill the person in the car. Whereas if it was a manslaughter charge, then the charge would be that, yes, he fired the shots, but his intention wasn't to kill someone, take their life. It may be to immobilise them or damage them in such a way that they can't fire back or cause the officer harm or injury.
All right, stay with us. I'm joined by Ranil Jayawardena, former Tory MP, and JJ Anisobi, first time on this programme. Welcome to the programme. JJ, here's the point. Whatever we think about relations between elements of the black community and the police, and there have been tensions for many, many years, I get that. I understand that. The point is, we as a country need good firearms police officers. And what was astonishing last night was to sit here with a couple of, long-term police officers who explained to me that last year only 6 people volunteered to join the firearms squad. I don't know how you feel about this case, about Chris Kaba, about what's been said, but we do need good police, don't we?
We need good police, but the Met have shown time and time again that they can't be trusted. Whether it's policing black communities, whether it's policing women, the Met Police have proven that we cannot trust them from anyone of any walk of life, unless perhaps you're a white male, perhaps then you are safer than a woman or
So you really believe that difference is there?
When we look at use of force by the police, the statistics are there. It's not my personal opinion. I look purely at the statistics. Use of force is disproportionately used against members of the black community and people of colour than it is against anyone else.
Is that possibly because the drug gang culture is bigger in parts of the black community? I mean, dare we discuss this, but we ought to.
Well, if we discuss drugs, for example, you look at the damage that county lines gangs do to this country. So if the drug that you're trying to get off the streets is cocaine, why are police disproportionately using stop and search? And the excuse that they use to stop and search black boys is they smell marijuana. You are now in Parliament yourself. That place has been reportedly rampant with cocaine use. If the police want to stop cocaine use, why not go and stop and search random politicians? Why not go down to Chelsea, to the affluent areas of this country?
I wouldn't disagree.
Exactly, but they choose not to do that.
But the difference is that cocaine use is, at least not in this country, less frequently directly associated with knife crime than perhaps street cannabis use.
Oh, no, I disagree. I think that these gangs are fighting over a mixture of dealing cannabis and cocaine. And if the police really wanted to stop it, they wouldn't be going after kids who are doing the dealing. They'd be going after stopping the users.
No, fair enough. Ranil, I found that a very welcome statement.
Yes, I mean, I'm not here to bat for the Labour Party, but
but
credit where credit's due.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Yvette's called this one right, which is that, the difference here is that police officers are acting in all our interests. They're acting on behalf of the state to keep us safe. And so if they are taking those life and death decisions, as has been proven in this case, on behalf of us all, then they deserve, I think, this special recognition to protect themselves, to protect the force in terms of getting the best people into those roles, as you've said, but also to make sure that they can actually fair justice, which is equally important for them. And we must make sure that, whereas in this case, where campaigns against the Met Police led to this prosecution, in my view, and led to a prosecution that should never have come forward in the first place, in my view, those sorts of things don't happen again.
You've been an MP for many years. I mean, JJ makes a point. I mean, I personally would much rather we didn't even talk about colour or race anyway at all. I'd rather we just judge people who they are. I hate the segmentation of society on the grounds of race or sexual orientation. But there is, rightly or wrongly, there is still a feeling in parts of the black community that the police aren't on their side.
Yeah, I'm sure there is a feeling in various communities across this country, as someone who is clearly not a white male. However, I'd say that it is right that police target their resources to protect the public in whatever way they possibly can. And if they foresee that there is a greater risk from any particular individual, whatever colour they might be, then they should stop and search that individual. They should make sure that the public are protected.
Let's go to 2010, Raoul Moat. He shoots and kills someone, injures other people, shoots and blinds a police officer. The police then catch him in a field. They have time to take him out, to eliminate him. Instead, they try and negotiate with him for 6 hours.
I remember.
And in that situation, I think it's the right thing to do, try and negotiate. But why, in London, with the Met Police, there's been 4 men since 2005, 4 men who are unarmed, shot dead by the police.
Right, let me ask you,
all 4 men, people of colour.
I am not here to argue that the police are perfect. We're human beings. We're all deeply imperfect. Me, perhaps more than others in some ways. But if you just think about what happened that night, 2 years ago, on Streatham Hill, was that police officer not right to discharge the firearm?
I don't think he was right to discharge the firearm. Yeah,
so see his colleagues run over by a maniac in a car who knew the police were on his tail for shooting 3 days previously.
You're saying seeing his colleagues being run over. None of his colleagues were run over. The car, and from the evidence that we've seen, yes, the car at first that Chris Kaba was in was going back and forth. Then a police Volvo pulls up behind it and closes it in further. The car was stationary when Chris Kaba was shot. It wasn't going back and forth. However, I do understand that the car itself, the Audi, had been involved in a shooting the day before, so the police were going there with that knowledge.
That's right. Kaba 3 days earlier, another shooting the day before. We don't know whether Kaba was part of it. Final thought on this debate.
Isn't that reason enough? I mean, the Audi was involved in a firearms incident days before. The police are pursuing that car. It's been hemmed in. It's reversing forwards and backwards. I think the officer was right to discharge his firearm. It's sad, and it genuinely is sad that someone has lost their life. But I just want to touch on another point about police being aggressive towards the black community. You can't have a broad brush approach to statistics like that, because the prison population in this country is around 90,000 people. Only 4,000 of them are women. If we were to look at that statistic, we would say men are penalised, targeted by the police. That's just not the case. It may be that men have a propensity to commit crimes more than women.
I tell you what we do have, folks. We have an increasing level of distrust in policing and criminal justice in this country at a number of levels. I'm drawing stumps on that. In a moment, we're going to discuss the complaint.